So first of all, thank you all so much for being here. We really appreciate your time and your attention. And so this came together, as you know, in a very short amount of time. So we don't have a presentation for anything. We're going to talk a little bit about our experiences working in New York. So we'll do a quick little introduction. Starting on my far left, this is...
my name is Jan Morin. I've worked at Dutch Kills and Pegu Club and Fresh Kills and a little tiki bar called Painkiller New York for a couple of years. Really, I got very lucky to kind of accidentally see the metamorphosis of the bar scene in New York from almost exclusively vodka soda, vodka cranberry shitholes to really beautiful hand-cut ice and fresh juice. And I'm old. I don't know if you guys can tell, but I'm like 53, so it was around the whole time.
He's old, yeah.
What's that in dollars?
7.
Nice. Hi, I'm Rosser. I worked in a bunch of cocktail bars around New York City, coming from the latter end of that trend from people going out and wanting to have a nice night out in town to actually searching out good cocktails. And I worked at some lovely bars in no particular order, Amore Margot, Dram in Brooklyn, Gin Palace, may it rest in peace. Actually, most of those bars, except for Amore, closed. Done a bunch of consulting, a lot of event producing, and trying to bring that New York City cocktail style to off-premise events and kind of bring it out to the world. It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Great. And my name is Ms. Franky Marshall, and I am a bartender. Right now I work at a place called Le Boudoir in Brooklyn. And in my past, I've started my career at a place called Clover Club. I worked Monkey Bar, the Tippler, Holiday Cocktail Lounge, Dead Rabbit, and I also work as a cognac educator, and I do things like this every now and then. And so yeah, so that's a little bit about my background. So I guess we just wanted to maybe start about talking about these kind of New York families of bars, you know, kind of how they kind of started, and you see kind of a progression of where people kind of got their lineage came from, I guess, and again, this is just, we don't have so many dates for you, but you know, we want to talk about places like Angel Share, which is one of the first cocktail bars after the cocktail renaissance. So we're kind of talking about post.
It's like 1999.
Yeah, so something. Yeah, so we're mainly talking about from then till now, because some of us are too young to remember otherwise. So yeah, so Angel Share, right? Spawned, you know, people like Shingo, Gokan, and Tetsuo, and bars like
ROKC in Harlem now, which is doing really beautiful stuff.
Right. So that was
Flat, which is a Japanese kind of cocktail lounge and music venue.
I think a lot of folks in this room are probably familiar with Strassi's work, but not everyone really knows that Angel Share was the bar that inspired him to be like, oh, you can drink like an adult. You know, it wasn't like we were saying the vodka crap with the Cape Codder assholes.
Whoa.
Sorry.
There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with it. You know, we'll make you any cocktail you want, as we know. But that's. No, I've never been to the Cape. Where is that? So right. So that was that school of, right? So we had Angel Share, then we had the Sasha School, right, which spawned places like where Jan worked.
Yeah.
The Kills.
Really starting with Milk and Honey, and then moving on from Milk and Honey to like Little Branch and Silver Lining and Dutch Kills and Fresh Kills and White Star, Weather Up and White Star.
And what do you think was a kind of a thread that went through that kind of style of bartending for Dutch places?
For me and most of the places I've worked, the main thing is simplicity, which is why when I come to Europe a lot, I feel sort of left behind. I feel like a dinosaur. I won't lie. I see a lot of citric acid and sulfites added to make things green, and just really cool science stuff that I really was never a part of. I mean, I can make a really, really good Manhattan, pretty good daiquiri, and a good old-fashioned, and tell a lot of jokes. But past that, the science stuff I see in Europe, the technique I see in Europe, the beauty of bartending style is something that we really never focus on in that family.
Right,
you know?
but you guys, that house, that school, kind of started the whole hand carved ice thing.
Yeah, definitely. That's just for us, that's a cocktail ingredient.
Right.
If you're gonna make cocktails and you're gonna use fresh juice and good beer, you should use good ice also.
Right. So,
That
and
was in itself kind of revolutionary, I guess. The idea of radical simplicity, where you were just focusing on, you know, taking a book like the Savoy or the old Jerry Thomas manual, very much in Joe DeGraff's school of saying, like, we're going to take these old drinks and bring them back into the present. not even taking them into the future, just bring them back and say, you know, we don't get sodas off of a gun. We don't get our ice wet from a machine.
So let me just ask, how many of you here are bartenders? Okay, great. And you're working mostly in and around Germany and
London,
UK, great. Okay, cool. All right.
No, this is
And
a refugee camp. We brought them all in.
Excellent.
All over the world.
I'm immigrant number one.
How are your tents?
Yeah.
Everyone happy with your tent accommodation?
It's a.
Can do the hot shower.
You got a hot shower. So could he, actually.
Anybody needs a hot shower? I have a big Airbnb.
Yeah.
Come on in, lots of towels.
So, all right. So you just mentioned Dale. So again, from Dale, I used to move into Audrey Saunders, which I'm sure a lot of you know her name. If anybody doesn't know any of these people, we can extrapolate. So you can give me this or this, and no wrong answers. And please ask questions if you like. So Audrey, and then the School of Pegu Club, right, which spawned people like.
Most notably for me, Kenta Goto, who's I think another Japanese guy who's one of the most beautiful bartenders in New York, both in drink concept and drink execution.
He's a pretty good guy, too.
He's a handsome fellow.
Right, so.
I have to ask, what was it like working in Pegu when you were there?
Oh, just embarrassing every day.
How long did you work there
I
for?
basically look like a giant orangutan, and Kenta is like the smoothest little Japanese like feline animal. It's really, really embarrassing.
How long did you work there for?
I worked there for about a year and a half.
About a year and a half, Pegu? Okay, great. Right, so there's that, and there's Flatiron Lounge, which started around,
I think like 2003, 2004.
yeah, so, and then people out there in Facebook world, you can correct us on the dates. But yeah, so Flatiron Lounge, Julie Reiner, and then Clover Club, again, where I worked for almost over 3 years or something like that. So again, just to give you an idea of kind of where people come from, and of course a lot of us have traveled and been elsewhere and kind of brought back what we learned from other places. I did a stage, a very short stage at Colebrook Row in 2011, and then went back to New York going, oh my God, I saw these things, and it really changed my perception of bartending and the way I bartend and my idea about drink presentation, composition, and style. And so speaking of which, like how was, yeah?
If I could ask though, I mean, the 3 years you were at Clover Club, which is a marvelous little place in Brooklyn if you've never been, it's actually not all that little, it's pretty sizable for Brooklyn.
Yeah.
What is this that Julie brought to that table that was unlike any other bar?
Well, so it opened in 2008. So at the time, I mean, there was just, first of all, that opening menu, which, had, again, the classics and then new twists on classics. And it had, at the time, I think there was Katie Stipe, who started shortly after we opened, who was still a female bartender. And I started there as a server and then got onto the bar almost a year later. So we didn't see a lot of women behind cocktail bars in those days. And so that was something, just promoting that whole culture of, inclusiveness and just really striving for, just having quality drinks and in a kind of a high volume environment, because Clover was a place you could just walk in, and if 10 people walk in at once, you're all getting a drink. It wasn't a place where you had to wait to be seated or anything like that. It was just, come one, come all. So that kind of thing.
That's kind of emblematic of New York bartending? That ability to handle large crowds in a very expedited manner? I
think it is generally for bartending, not always in cocktail bars, because there are still a lot of bars where you have to, you can't stand, right? You have to be seated, you have to behave, evidence Milk and Honey, where there's a
yeah, I mean, Attaboy still has
rules, yeah.
Dead Rabbit, even upstairs, is kind of tough.
Right. So I think it's a mixture, but what I was going to get to later too is now there's kind of a move away from that structure and just kind of more, to come in and have a good time. But sometimes it's just a matter of what is actually a bar is capable of handling.
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
Please ask all the
That's why we're
questions. Really.
So you touched on the subject of like the Milk and Honey sort of discipline, let's say, for the customer, let's say, and for the people behind the bar. I know that there was a lot of discipline involved if you work there. But now, as it's moving away from being something like, the gentleman should take his hat off and all this kind of thing. But do you think that people in general, as cocktail customers, are people that are aware of cocktail culture, they're geeks, they're they're fans, that they've learned the rules now, and it's safe to say that we can now open it up to the next chapter or the next thing, like that you're going to trust your customer a little bit more than 10 years ago or so?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been an incredible change in the customer. Yeah, people like Audrey, Sasha, all that Dale, that Julie, the kind of original wave of New York City cocktail bars really did a great service to all of you younger bartenders in educating the client base. I mean, you don't have to have a conversation about gin anymore. People will just fucking drink it. Right? You don't have to have a conversation about how to behave at a bar. Although if you have
although
if I'm there, you might.
Yeah.
You know, your garnish bin is still a snack bar for a lot of people, but you know, it has gotten immeasurably better since 10 or 15 years ago. I mean, you don't have to be as rigid because the people themselves just behave a little better. Yeah, that's a great. Yeah, totally true.
That sense of decorum too was what was so radical about a place like Milk and Honey, because the idea of a place where people can go and have like a good adult fun time and drink and not have to have it be a sports bar or a nightclub or a hotel bar.
Or get into a fist fight with a stranger, or...
I mean, you still can if you really want to, but we don't recommend it.
I actually do. At least once.
I prefer to get into fist fights with my friends. That's just my style.
So let's talk a little bit about bartending, like how it's different in New York, if it is at all. So things like what, you know, maybe there's a slightly an approach to making a cocktail maybe a little bit faster, getting it out, because people in New York, I don't know if you've been there, they don't really want to wait for anything. So we don't really have the luxury a lot of times to take a long time to make a drink. As a matter of fact, there's certain bars in New York where they have a timer. When that ticket goes down, the server hits a timer, and the bartender's under pressure to make drinks. No names, but if you've been there, you know which bar that is.
At Pegu, we had like a 4-minute ticket time out of the service bar, and that was a service bar that fed 100 seats with you know, 7 or 8 ingredient drinks.
Yeah,
so 8 at a time.
Yeah.
So it was.
Was it a 7-bottle pickup every time?
Not every time.
Well, and I think, you know, what this stems from is kind of in New York where everything's about the bottom line. You know, rents are very expensive. People want to make money. We'll talk a little bit about money later. But, you know, so there's very much that sense, yeah? Because the more people you serve, the more money you're going to make,
Time
right?
is money. You guys have heard that before? Time is money. It's fucking true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is.
I learned something new today.
Can I curse? Can I curse on Facebook Live? Is that okay?
I love it.
I'm pretty sure we are.
The only problem is you're forcing me not to curse because I want to be the good cop.
I told them put the Facebook page on my accounts, not on the company's account.
Right.
Perfect, yeah.
And then we can, you know, be looking for a room.
I can unbutton.
No, button up.
Two is okay.
Yeah, 2 is okay. Not any lower than mine. So what about, what else about New York stuff? What about technique? We talked a little bit about technique earlier.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I've had the luxury of, even before brand work, really doing a lot of traveling around, and I've always been super impressed with the kind of the physical beauty of European bartending. It's not something I ever thought about. You know, I thought about accuracy and pour. I thought about, you know, shaking to make a good drink and add the right amount of water, but I never really thought about it as something that could be really beautiful until I worked with Kenta, and then I still couldn't do it. But I started to have a concept of it. But what you guys do here, I was just in the UK, saw some really beautiful bartending, just in Italy, and saw some really beautiful bartending.
Yeah.
Some of the style and kind of, I guess, working flair maybe is the right term for it, is super
elegance,
beautiful. And in
grace,
general, it's something that we focus on in New York very much because people just want their fucking drink. I mean, I don't know, who's been in New York here?
The reservation
Did you anybody have any interaction with New Yorkers who were on the sidewalk and you were walking slow?
Yeah.
And you were like, get the fuck out of my way. Like, well, those are your bar customers,
You
right?
can even look them in the eye and say hi. They're like, oh.
No, that's actually not true. We love that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We love
Well, it depends. You know,
We're remarkably friendly people as long as you're not in our way.
Yeah, just stay out of our fucking way. That's the goal. But those are the people you're serving as bars. So, So you're not focused on some beautiful stir or some high pour from a jigger or.
well, speak for yourself. But no, I think that's changing. Yeah, I will high pour it. I will high pour it, my jigger. But again, that's going back to, you know, that time that I spent abroad and coming back and bringing that technique. But I tell you, when I first came back and was trying all these techniques, people were looking a little bit like the side eye, kind of going, what is she doing? And you know what, I'm expressing myself now, you know? And I think I wish that more people in the States and New York would do that. You know, spend a little bit more time on making a drink gracefully and beautifully. Because imagine if you have a great drink and it's been prepared by a lovely lady like this with all this technique. Are you going to, you know, you're going to melt, right?
Time being money, you find ways to, you know.
But I think you can do both. Anyway, I'm just saying that's one, say, difference that we have, right?
I mean, you can definitely do both. I was just at a bar in Milan called La Cerba, which if nobody's ever visited, you should see this bar, La Cerba, in action on a Friday or Saturday night. I mean, it was 5 deep at the bar and 8 deep outside on the street drinking. And 4 bartenders who were working as a team like really nobody I've ever seen. Super beautiful, stylish, fucking fast. I mean, so you can definitely be beautiful and fast. Just the economy was kind of something we always focused on. So.
And even just our tools, you know, we use a lot of 2-piece shakers, you know, small tin on large tin, I think.
Cobbler shakers? Never heard of them.
No, we don't, there's not a lot of cobblers as much.
If I want my drink tomorrow, then maybe.
Yeah, except, I mean, at places like Angel Share where they'd use Japanese techniques, that you find the 3 pieces there, you know? So what about, let's think a little bit about, is there a philosophy? Is there a kind of, well, we just kind of talked about getting it out faster, but...
Philosophies really vary from family to family. You know, obviously the milk and honey kind of ethic being just really clean, simplicity, very classic cocktails. The EO philosophy being fast and fun.
Free pour, that's another family,
you know, people like David Arnold really kind of, you know, that's another thing about European sciencey bars that I see. These guys love David Arnold, like.
I mean, so, why wouldn't they?
That's changed the game for those who
I don't know
are willing to go.
Does anybody work in a bar with like a rotovap and a little science?
The toys and the kind of molecular.
Do you love Dave Arnold? Is he like one of your?
I have a question about this issue.
Is it an issue?
You said that you see in Europe in Europe a lot of science behind bars, and that's totally true. And actually, the book of Dave Arnold is actually your Bible. Yeah, it is.
I've seen it in.
Then on the other way, you're talking a lot about classic drinks or hosting, which is really important, of course. Hosting is the most important thing we are all do. What do you think about the science thing, which we really do intense, especially in Germany and London? What do you think about that? Is it's just a fun thing, or you think it makes sense? Or, because you said that you have to be more faster and talking about people who are really in a hurry. Something, and if you're doing the science thing, you cannot be really fast.
Well,
I
think it, you know, it really depends on where you're working and your audience, your clientele. You know, not every approach is going to work the same for everyone. And further to what you're saying, there are certain bars like, you know, and I'm not speaking for this bar now, but when I was there briefly at Colbert Grow, all of the science went into the preparation of everything. You know, it was on the front end. It wasn't during service. You weren't getting, you know, so they were really, really fast. Right? So again, it really depends.
Yeah, the culinary aspect. And that's really, when you talk about science and cocktails, you're talking about the influence of people like Renee and Ferran Adria and that kind of people who really, and in New York, Wiley Dufresne, who were cooking with chemicals. You're talking about that moving into cocktails, which I think is a totally logical progression. And a lot of that is prep heavy as opposed to a la minute, right? I mean, the most a la minute sciencey stuff I see is people using liquid nitrogen in the moment. But I don't think it really affects speed. And I think if you neglect adaptation and change, you're kind of stupid, right? I think that you have to use it respectfully, and I don't think you can use it as a gimmick. You can't be, you know, it can't be just dry ice all over your bar or liquid nitrogen all over your bar. It has to be like it has to be an ethic that you adhere to and that you believe in.
It has to make sense. It has to be organic, germane to what you're doing.
In Germany, I think Kinley does a great job in Frankfurt with this, and I think I went to a place the other night called Velvet here that I thought also did a really beautiful job with some of this modern technique. which I'm just always amazed by because I just never worked with it, and it's the cool. I think it's the coolest shit in the world, honestly.
I mean, it's a marvelous thing, but you know, speaking to the New York culture specifically, the way we have our labor model structured is actually really worth talking about with that, because a lot of people would love to integrate a lot of prep heavy, a lot of front end oriented things, but oftentimes, you know, you can't pay people that much money. Part of what, I'm sure you're all familiar with the difference in tipping culture between the US and, well, really everywhere else. And it has to do with the fact that we can actually pay our service staff less if they're going to get gratuities from whatever the customer sees.
What are we up to now in New York? It's like $5 an hour?
$7.30 something.
Up to 40 hours. When I managed a restaurant.
Which is how much in euros? Let me quickly calculate that. Hold on a second.
5.30.
5.30 euros an hour. Yeah.
So people aren't being paid.
And that's a labor lot. When I started, it was like $1.80 or $2.15 an hour.
So we have some inbuilt obstacles, whether it's when we talk about the need to serve volume because of the way the rent works, and New York rent is aggressive. I would even call it predatory when it comes to hospitality. But we don't have the resource, the human capital of being able to take our time with things.
Well, you know, that you bring up an interesting point because, ironically, a lot of New York bars, we can make money. Let's talk about the money, you know, which is a big factor as well. I mean, we bartenders work off of tips, right? I know some people work in hotels that make a very high hourly, but they make tips on top of that as well. But so let's say we're making $7 an hour plus tips. We're relying on the tips. So the management could hire somebody and pay them to do prep, but a lot of times they just won't. Well, exactly.
It's unlikely. The 80-20 law, where in hospitality, specifically in New York, you have to spend 80% of your time interacting with your guests and 20% doing other work in order to qualify for the tip pool.
Right, but they could still hire somebody just to do prep.
And
so,
they have to
right.
pay them
Yeah.
more than what our tip
Yeah.
You know, that's another thing that really,
$13 an hour.
what we're talking about now, another thing that pops into my mind is just how staff heavy a lot of the bars in Europe are compared to our bars. We were both in Rome a couple of days ago at Jerry Thomas.
Not together. We weren't together.
I mean, we were there at the same time.
I mean, same time, but not together. I just want everyone to know that.
I still like
I don't know.
I just had the feeling you were creating a pyramid. I can feel that there's more demand for drinks.
Yeah.
Well, we were just talking about staff and really coming from the prep side, which bar owners in New York don't want to pay somebody, you know, $13 an hour to make juice or sit around and not serve customers.
Yeah, so great example. So where I work, so I'm in charge of the bar, but I'm the prep guy. So we don't have a bar. We haven't had a bar back in, at least 4 or 5 months. So I juice, I make the syrups, I do the prep, you know, and I've been away for 2 weeks. I don't know what the hell's happening over there. But but before going away, I had to do an intense amount of prep just to set everything up, right? So sure, I would much prefer if the owners were paying someone to do that, but they don't really want to.
It's not built into the model.
It's not. So there's that. But there are places where they have, like, the Aviary, which we were going to get to because they just recently opened. Are you familiar with the Aviary in Chicago?
Yeah.
So, yeah, someone's not? Say you're not? Good.
Yes.
Good, yeah. No, but the gentleman behind, no, that's great, good, because it's a cutting-edge bar that is part of one of the top restaurants in the US, probably in the world, called Alinea. And for instance, they have a whole team. It started as kind of chefs making drinks. They've got a whole kitchen. They've got 2 people doing ice full time. That's their job, in charge of ice. So they just opened in New York. I haven't been yet, so I'm really interested to see, and it will be interesting to see what happens if they change, again, if the raise the bar, change the game in New York as far as their techniques and execution, but I know that they've got full-time people to do whatever they're bidding.
They're also based out of a hotel, so they have the built-in labor model of being able to say, we can delegate this to the hotel staff.
Yeah.
We're getting paid full-time.
Yeah.
Most bars don't have those resources.
Right, yeah.
Time and money, which, as I hear it's the same thing.
The time.
Yeah.
Wow.
was in a difficult situation.
But how does that leave your like schedule model? When do you actually come in to do the prep? Do everyone come in 2 hours before like the actual bar
2,
opens?
3, 4. Yeah.
Do you do the prep every single day, or do you spend like, okay, let's meet up, let's do the prep for the next
Yeah.
I think that varies from bar to bar.
Yeah.
Certain bars have an opener come in about an hour and a half before service and make fresh juice. Obviously, things like simple syrup, honey syrup, or jad are going to last a little longer, so they don't need to be done every day. It just varies from bar to bar.
Yeah.
That's a really case by case.
Like some bars have a really extensive cocktail menu with like tons of syrups.
Yeah, but
we have that where I work.
And who does?
I just know.
In the case of Dead Rabbit, they have a syrups guy.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes
Yeah.
a while.
I mean,
Yeah.
some bars do have a dedicated syrups guy.
Oh, right.
Or
Yeah.
dedicated cup guys. It happens.
Yeah, they-
But those bars are few and far between, and they kind of exist in a space where they're, you know, they're not, they have a little more, let's just say they have a little more financial freedom than the bulk of bars, even great cocktail bars in New York. You know, in the instance of Aviary, it's, you know, operating under a hotel umbrella where the money-making model for Aviary is not selling drinks, right? They make their money, and the drinks, it's kind of a perk for the hotel, sort of, and like a prestige thing, right? And, you know, a lot of these bars are not really reliant on the drinks to make the money. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If you're really relying on the drinks to make the money, you don't have an extensive service program because you have to pay a guy to do that. And in America, it's just not, you know.
So when I worked at Dram, which was a wonderful little cocktail bar in Brooklyn, born off of this idea that you could have wonderful, well-made drinks with fresh syrups, fresh juices, take on the classics, sort of I guess like an off-growth of all the fine cocktail bars in Manhattan. But it was nestled under the Brooklyn Bridge, and they said, well, shit, we can open a bar for how much? All right, let's go for it. You know, you'd have a lot of resource pooling, whereas, you know, the bar back would come in and make simple, with Demerara, they would make honey syrup, they make orgeat, and that'd be it. Those would be the 3 base syrups for all the 12 drinks on the menu for a given season. You know, trying to maximize your base ingredients, and then, you know, you can pull in your modifiers. There's an enormous back bar full of things I'd never heard of or drank before, and I spent a lot of my slow Sundays going through everything, just drinking it, tasting it.
of course. We're not drinking, we're learning. Thank you, Francesco Lafrancone.
I'm gonna say if the money's right there, then I don't really care.
Yeah.
There was a different way of doing cocktails. I saw a lot working in restaurants, not just in cocktail bars, of sort of this outgrowth of people not having the resources or the education to say, oh, I can use an expensive, rare Amaro or herbal liqueur. I'm going to raid the kitchen and infuse something myself. Which I saw a lot. It's been sort of eclipsed by the glamour of the cocktail bar, this idea of house-made ingredients as a shortcut. I once had recently, I was at one of the quality restaurants, Quality Eats, Brian.
Yep.
Schneider. We used to work together at the Monkey Bar.
Yep.
He had made his own house-made genevieve. Who in this room is psychotic enough to spend 3 weeks perfecting your own genevieve recipe?
I think there's a couple people, yeah. I would say that was a...
God bless you.
Yeah. I was, yeah.
But there's definitely that sort of strain of where you can't get nice things, when you are sort of constrained by your labor model or your ability to buy in bulk, that people end up making those things themselves. Sometimes it's brilliant.
So,
question while we're talking about labor, if you don't mind. So I know that Union Square Hospitality, Dane Mayer, are starting to eliminate tips. Graham's doing something similar to Aviary and his restaurants, at least in Chicago. How do you feel like that movement is impacting the establishments that you guys have worked at or that you are familiar with in New York?
well, I haven't worked in that type of environment. I've gone out to them, and I know that there's a couple of places that I've visited that have actually pulled away from that model now.
Yeah, it's tricky.
It is. It's very tricky. So I think it's a huge discussion, and I don't really know exactly where I stand. I mean, I prefer the model that we're working on now. But I understand...
You can make a lot of money.
Well,
Sure.
but I understand that money should be spread around a little bit more. You know, because people in the kitchen, let's say you're working at a bar with a kitchen, the kitchen staff still makes, what, 10, 12 an hour.
Yeah.
But we're talking about New York again. If you're talking about California, San Francisco, their minimum, if I'm not mistaken, is $15 an hour, right?
I think so.
For bartenders. And then they're still making tips on top of that. So it's tough. It depends. That's my opinion. I don't
The
know.
hospitality included model was something when I was working for John Colicchio, my last work call working in restaurants, we experimented with, and they have still done some experiments. They took Kraft, which is the sort of flagship restaurant of Craftsman Hospitality, a landmark New York restaurant. It's absolutely worth going to. Just a marvelous place. They went hospitality included, which is the common
Yeah.
for it, as opposed to gratuity free. They went for lunch service, and all of their top earning captains wouldn't work lunch anymore because they weren't making any money. So even when you
Enough money, or the money that they were used to.
Sorry, not
They're
any
all
money,
still making
strictly
money.
speaking, but people get accustomed to this sort of, and it speaks to how people get in hospitality in the States and New York in particular. You figure out that you can make good, quick money because you came to New York to be an actor or a musician or an interior decorator or
Whatever it is.
somebody who juggles monkeys outside of Union Square. Yeah, it's a lot harder than it looks, and the shit gets everywhere. The challenge for a lot of those places, and Union Square hospitality is persistent, which I'm really excited about. But that works in a restaurant model. And a lot of their bartenders decided to pursue other opportunities once it went into a gratuity included situation where it is more equitable, about distributing the tips across the house. But people who were accustomed to making several $100s a night for, their skill set realized they can go to places that are still tipped out and make maybe even more money.
I mean, as a guy who cooked for many years, we didn't make nearly as much money as servers, but we did really get to abuse servers. So I think
You gotta weigh, how much that's worth. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Making me shaving cream desserts and drink distilled vinegar and so look. I think as a cook, you're signing up for sort of the worst job in the modern world. Really, one of the hardest physically and emotionally and mentally. And you're signing up for that. And if you're doing that in New York, you're psychotic, you're a masochist, and you deserve all the pain you want. I don't think
he's not joking about any of those things. That's
I'm really not. I mean,
cut. I can't hear you.
So I personally really don't like the non-tipping model. Not because I think so much it influences. I mean, I'm just speaking for me personally. I don't really care. I like tips. They're great, right? That's how we make money as bartenders. But I don't work for tips, right? I work because I genuinely want you to like me and you to have a good time in my bar, right? I don't behave a certain way for the tip.
I don't know. I don't know.
I'm also massively insecure and wanted people to.
Yeah, really. Yeah, of course.
That's how you get into this sort of thing.
Well, speak for yourself. I'm not massively insecure.
No, it's not really insecurity. It's just like I like to make people feel good, right? So I want to provide good service no matter what the tip is. So I don't know that the non-tipping model would affect how I treat a customer, but I know it would certainly affect my bottom line. I mean, if you're in a good place in New York City, you're making between 50 and, if you're in a nightclub in New York City, you make $100 an hour, $125 an hour on tips. And that's pretty powerful. I mean, there are people working 2 nights a week in New York making $6 grand.
Yeah.
So, personally, as a bartender, I like the tipping model.
Yeah,
because
of course.
It keeps us paid.
Yeah.
And I know that
But you have to admit that what you just said sounds great, but there are not a lot of people who really feel that way. There's a lot, as much as people say, I'm here to serve my guest, there are a lot of people who are working for that bottom line in New York City.
Yeah, they shouldn't be in the business, though, I think.
But they are. So I just want to say, let's be honest. Let's just be honest about things,
You want to work at Tao? I would love to work at Tao.
Yeah. So let's talk a bit about, because I have European.
Yeah.
Sorry?
I think that the way that you like your work, not for tip, will automatically come more tip because you do it with love.
Yeah.
people see this, they are happy, they give you more tip automatically.
Yeah, your customer, your customer.
Just do it for tip, it will come automatically.
Your customer might not know how to make all the drinks you make, but your customer's not fucking stupid. And your customer knows if you're lying to his face or not, really. So if you're in this business for money, the people you serve feel it, right? We all work for money, and there's a difference between working for money and behaving a certain way for money, right? If I don't know, if a lot of us could just live and make and have money, we might not work. I certainly wouldn't. I would play a lot of golf and travel all the time if money was just free. But I didn't pick this career because it was the most money I could make. I picked it because I'm not really built for anything else, and this is what I want to give you what's in here, right? And that's like that's the beautiful opportunity we all have, I think. And I don't think that's unique to New York in any way. I think that's like why you end up in this business, because you have a lot to give and you really want to.
Well, I think that's why people end up working in cocktail bars, because definitely if you're working with cocktails, you're cutting down on the amount of money that you can make anyway. So people don't go into cocktail bars further. Yeah, we're in it for many different reasons, which leads me to like why it's so great. Like what's great about working in New York? I have a lot of European bartenders that ask me like, what would you suggest if I want to move to New York? Do you think it's a good idea working there? And I think, honestly, it can be a great place to work. There's a lot of opportunities. There's, things like this that come up. There's a lot of competitions, if that's what you're into. You can meet the people. You can meet people like Dave Arnold and Dave Wondrich, because they live maybe in your neighborhood, or they go out to events as well. There's a lot of potential. Or they come to, yeah, for sure. There's, just networking. There's people that come in from all over the world to go to bars in New York City. Some of the other great things about working there, or the bad things.
I don't think I ever hired anyone who was international off of a visa. It's actually really challenging to get a legal work permit in New York. It's also super easy to work illegally in New York.
Mm-hmm. Cut.
Historically, that's true, but now that's really true.
It's a little harder now.
It's really hard to run business in New York without.
Will be very careful and diligent with their visa work, but I mean, if you just want
a job, you can.
Exist in New York.
Yeah, sure, you can still do it, but it's not. You're not going to work it dead rapid.
Oh, absolutely not. No, I mean anything that has
without a tax ID,
any kind of, which are also very difficult to get at here. Any place that has any kind of due diligence, it's going to be a challenge to get in there and get sponsored.
Yeah.
There are some places that do sponsor international talent deliberately in order to bring other styles of bartending, other styles of hospitality into New York, but those are always personal relationships, personal connections you make with people. So go to all the bar shows you can, go to all the competitions you can, and if you are interested, then it's entirely possible to do, but it's certainly challenging.
And I think it would be a great thing to have more European influence, or just not just European, but other outside of the U.S. influence into New York, because that would also change our bar scene, I think, for the better as well.
It is one of those complicated
Or add
things.
to it, for sure.
Absolutely, I mean, it's one of the complicated things where we have, in America, the legacy and the history of Prohibition. And that, along with, some of the economic underpinnings of what it takes to run a bar in a place like New York, still influences the drinking culture and still influences the idea of nightlife. That's, when I think about you talking about how beautiful people can bartend here, where you were saying the long pours where people really take care in all the presentation, was simply lost on us for a long period of time because bars were disreputable places to be, even after Prohibition was lifted. America has a very complicated relationship with alcohol. It's not integrated into daily life in the same way. It's sort of this, what I love about Milk and Honey was like it was a place for adults to go and drink in an adult fashion, away from the playgrounds, away from the nightclubs.
How often do you drink in playgrounds, Rosser? I don't know.
Only after dark.
With your monkey.
Me and my monkey and brown paper bag.
Yeah.
But it's worth noting about America's relationship. While we've done a wonderful thing in terms of glamorizing cocktail and really bringing it into the cultural conversation, it's because we were so starved for so long.
It's like our relationship with sex. It's a little weird. Anyway, never mind that. Anybody have any questions? Anybody have any more questions for?
It should be weird.
Right. About the scene.
How long have you been in Berlin?
Yeah.
Anything anyone would like to know specific?
And again, we're talking about our experiences in New York, of course. You know, I mean, New York is a very big city, you know, in a state in the U.S., so it's...
I mean, it's also an international city.
Yeah.
That, you know, it belongs to the world in a way.
Yeah.
Do you have a strong turnover there? Are people staying in the same place for a long time, or?
I suppose that depends. There are people who will get and stay in a position, particularly in a fine cocktail bar, places like Clover Club or Dutch Kills, places where you are making consistent money, for lack of a better term. But you feel satisfied with the job and will stay there, whether it's full-time or taking 2-3 shifts a week consistently there for years. And then you'll have people who kind of go mercenary and go rogue. They get the skill set that they need, and they will be in a new bar every 14 months, generously.
Or even less sometimes.
Generously, yeah.
But, and that's another positive thing, too, that you bring it up, is that being associated with certain bars can obviously bring you a lot of, whether it's recognition or a lot more opportunities. So sometimes when people are in a great bar, they will just stay there because it's, you know, you're learning, plus it's just a great place to be, great environments.
And the barback system there is working well? Do you hire, for example, barback to become...
In an ideal situation, yeah, it'll be someone comes in because they want to learn, they're willing to put in the work, and they will find themselves eventually facing the guest. Some places, not so much. Again, talking about the complications of labor models, restaurants in particular, people who are willing to do the work, not because it fulfills them as a person, but because remunerating their family wherever they're from fulfills them as a person is a very common model as well.
Yeah, but there are certain bars where that's built in, like the EO model, the employees only model is that. You know, you start as a stalker, the STOCKER type. Just saying. Yeah. Well, he started. So yeah, this is stalker. Yeah.
This shit's fun. Trust me, it's weird.
And then you become a barback, if I'm not mistaken, and then eventually you can get onto the bar. But that can take about 3 years, if I'm not mistaken.
And there are cocktail bars we speak highly of.
Their apprentice program is nuts.
Yeah.
It involves a lot of hazing, it's actually very much like a kitchen, I think.
Yeah.
Where there's a lot of...
Down to the chef's jackets.
Yeah.
And there are places also that hire barbacks who will be essentially career barbacks.
Okay.
Yeah, again, a lot of this stuff, New York is so big that there is no one model.
Yeah.
Every bar is different. In the Milk and Honey family, we've always had barbacks that were barbacks who didn't aspire to ever bartend. And I think that's super successful. If you just have a guy who's a barback for you all the time, it's pretty ideal.
It's amazing. Really. Yeah,
If
cuts
I
down on
remember correctly, some folks at Little Branch make more than bartenders consistently.
The barbacks in the family they do very well. Yeah.
Gentleman back there had a question.
Like future-wise, do you see any new schools of New York bartending emerging? Like, is there a next Dutch Kids school of New York bartending, or is it just building off the existing ones?
No, I hope that there will always be new things. I mean, I personally want there to be infusions of, as I said, new talent, and it'll be interesting, as I said, to see what happens with Aviary now, because they're from Chicago, so they've got a different way of working than the New York style. So I'm really hoping, that there are. Because you don't just want to have those few models, you want to have more challenges and more exciting things going on. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Dante is a place that's kind of a little nexus of talent right now, and I think in the next few years we'll see some really good people come out of Dante and open their own bars. But I think that's a really beautiful thing when, I was at Little Branch as a customer, and Rich Picotto, Mike Magnuson, Sam Ross, Mike McElroy, Karen Stanley, all these people that now went on to own bars, Eric Alpern, who owns a couple places in LA, all work together at the same staff. And if you can find yourself in that moment in time where you're at a bar like that is breeding an entire generation, sort of, or an entire...
generations.
Yeah, that's the right word. An entire generation of bar owners and really talented people, and that's a really cool place to be. And Dante kind of looks like that to me right now, I think, in New York. Darren, I think, is one of the best guys working in the business. I love what he does, and both as a mentor and a bartender. I don't know who else in New York is really doing that right now.
Yeah.
I'm sure someone
Fancy a
is.
couple years ago.
Fancy, yeah, sure, Fancy. Definitely got a couple guys that are pretty cool.
Yeah. I know. I think I've come out of or worked with some great people, some great groups of people where I've worked as well. So I mean, there's
But I don't know. I mean, it's always hard to identify those things in the moment. You know, it's easy to look back and say, wow, that shit was special. But it's hard to kind of think about that from now and extrapolate into the future.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Great. Yeah.
Speaking a little about progression, is it a slight difference between America and, let's say, the rest of the world? Because I can see a lot of people being bartenders for a really long time, way longer than a lot of people are bartenders in, let's say, London. And they go to be a bar, because it's, for me, when I look at it from outside, it looks like people are bartenders because of the money, but nobody wants to be the manager or the GM or the, not necessarily the owner. Everyone wants to, boom, my place.
Management stuff, but it's the inglorious side of things.
I mean, do you want to like make drinks and make people laugh, or do you want to clean toilets? Was the question. Managing places.
I do both.
You do both, right? And I did both. And I was Dutch skills.
Yeah.
But you know, a lot of the reason people don't want to move into management in America is because then you're out of the tip pool often, right? And if you're not,
you have to be.
Huh?
Legally, you have to be.
Yeah. So that's a big
you're
issue.
always out of the tip pool.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know, you could go from making $80,000 a year to $40,000 a year, and working longer hours and making a schedule and trying to balance the personalities of your staff, which is probably one of the most onerous tasks in the bar business.
That's the same problem in Germany.
Yeah.
Sure.
Especially when you come to hotel chain, their managers, they are out of the tip.
Yes.
And they work 40 hours more a week or
Yeah, exactly.
And they get super shitty pay.
I mean, you're never, you know, as a manager, you're never not working.
Yeah.
Your phone is on, right? You're getting emails, you're getting texts. Why is the internet down? 3:30 in the morning when you're
trying to close out. Yeah.
I mean, so I think that's why you don't see that progression. People would rather bartend. It's responsibility and risk, right? Are you comfortable with responsibility and risk, or do you just want to make drinks and make money?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't have.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't want to take the next step, especially for bar ownership, because then you're financially at risk.
But the smart thing to do, of course, would be to follow that path, right? To go bartender, manager, GM, just so you could see and learn. But a lot of people don't. You're right. A lot of people want to go from being a bartender to suddenly they're owning a place, and that can become problematic because they don't have that skill set, right? That you would have had you followed.
The financial experience.
Well, that's it. You know, so.
And, you know, the idea of sweat equity comes up a lot.
Explain that for.
Moving out, yeah. So I went through the management channels before I ended up in brand work. And my life insurance thanks me for it. Because without that skill set, I wouldn't have been able to work comfortably in brands. But a lot of people will get, you know, a lot of good press. They'll get a good, consistent following in their bar. They'll think that they're hot shit, and they'll be like approached by someone who says, "We want to open a bar." And you know, I'm going to throw completely theoretical numbers out there, but like 60% of the time, those people are just interested in owning a bar, not in operating a business, not in funding and figuring out how to maintain a business, but they want something that's going to make them look good that they can take their wives and mistresses to. So you get hired on as the bartender.
Not at the same time.
It's a weird world.
If they're smart, I mean.
So you get hired on as the hot shit face of the bar, and you do this bar program, and you're going to get what people keep telling you is sweat equity, which is not actual financial compensation. I mean, they'll pay you salary or something, but you don't actually get an ownership stake in the business, like the number of shares. So a lot of people get scared away because they watch their friends who are like, yeah, I want to own a bar, I was a bartender, it's great, I can do this, and they maybe fail ingloriously and hopefully quietly. Not everyone's equipped to actually handle the tasks of running a business. So a lot of folks will go out to brand work. A lot of folks will go other places in the liquor industry that, you know, value that knowledge, that skill set, and that experience. But not a lot of people go into their own operation because they have a ton of money or a very, very high risk of failure. Excuse me, high tolerance to the risk of failure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, opening a bar in New York City, you're not going to do something nice for less than $300,000 or $400,000, and that's very.
That's key money.
It's very low.
Mm-hmm.
That's
It's gonna be done
awesome.
in a neighborhood that nobody wants to go to.
Yeah.
How does it work normally with raising that capital? Like you're a great bartender, you have great network, you have social media following, you have all that shit, but you don't have 300 grand.
Or a right business plan, trying to get to somebody wealthy.
Just not banks are absolutely out of the question.
Well, there's a lot of different models. People do things a lot of different ways. As Ross was saying, there's that person who gets approached by people with money, and then they're just the face of the bar. They work in it, and they invest none of their own money.
Dead rabbit.
I have no comment on any of the above.
Yeah, I mean, we can't speak to other people's.
I mean, yeah, I don't know the financial.
But it's sort of an open, like, there's some dudes that were at their bar and they thought they're amazing, and they have this place in the financial district. It's extremely expensive. They brought them in, and without them, it wouldn't be successful. But it's a partnership, so like they did it.
Too. Yeah, I mean,
I'm really not comfortable speaking
Okay,
business arrangements, just out of respect for everybody doing what they do and doing it very well. But there are a lot of different models. You can be approached by a restaurateur who has a couple of successful businesses, and they say, well, now I want a bar. And they may know nothing about the bar business, and I really hope that you do, because sometimes that doesn't work out.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, it's one of those businesses.
But it's just so extremely expensive. Like that's the one common thing.
Yeah.
If you put your foot in the water, like, it's just unbelievably expensive. So you can go to Cleveland or Kansas City or anywhere like that, and you can be a great bartender, have a great program, everything like that. In New York, it's just requires so much more.
It really does. It does.
To do something.
To do anything, to be honest with you, in New York, and for those people thinking of moving there, you really have to want to be there. You really have to want to be there, because you will be spending a lot more money on everything. And you have to lower your standards in a lot of ways too, because it can be very hard. You really do. You're used to a certain style of living. When you move there, you might be sharing a one-bedroom apartment with a couple other guys. And you never know. So and the roaches and the rats. So yeah.
This is my first year in New York.
Yeah, but there's all of that though. So I mean, I know a lot of people have gone into business, and a couple, less than a year later, out of business. Even places that had a huge backing. I worked in a hotel bar that had everything behind them. You know what I mean? $2,000 plates, gold this, owned by celebrities. Less than a year, the place closed. But everything was in place. So there's really no...
there's no guarantee.
No, nothing.
Even if you have tons of money, there's no guarantee you're going to open a successful business.
Yeah.
You still have to put a lot of effort and a lot of research.
If somebody's a smart business person, they also know when to get out too, so they...
Well, there's that.
You might see someone coming up on this actually happened to a bar I used to work in, friends. They hit their 5-year mark where they're guaranteed.
Wow, somebody get a bar back over here.
I just have to say, now we're in a party.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not uncommon for people to last 5 years and then have their...
It's okay.
Just go down.
How many bartenders does it take to clean up? How many bartender glasses? Just one. There's only one glass.
One glass, 3 months.
All right. All right. You know what? Yeah.
I think I have a lot more to say.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any other questions before we get out of here?
Anyway, but yeah.
Anyone?
So, but anyway, we're going to be hanging out. So, please talk to us after. So, I personally just want to thank everybody. Thank you, Jan, for asking me to be here. Thank you, Rosser. Thank you, George Meyer. Thank you to all. Thank you, we just here at CAMPARI. Thank you very much.